Mark Randy. I am Evan Giddings, coming at you twice a week. Well, let's move on to that part of the conversation, Mark. So Brock Purdy comes out and says, not 100% sure essentially if he's going to play the entire 2023 season. In my opinion, that means Trey Lance is immovable at this point. Some may say that he still is because of what Brian Baldinger, our colleague with Odyssey, also does a lot of great work with 95.7 The Game, came out with a video as we're recording this on Monday earlier today, Baldy's breakdowns from the Bay, and talking about the quarterback room in San Francisco and the fact that he believes that Sam Darnold was brought in to compete. That also aligns with what Kyle Shanahan has mentioned about having two quarterbacks, Trey Lance and Sam Darnold, that will compete with QB1 reps, this upcoming offseason, or I should say when the offseason officially begins, when they get pads on and start throwing the football. But Brian Baldinger is basically saying he wouldn't be shocked if Sam Darnold is the starter for the quarterback, or the starter for the 49ers at quarterback come this fall, Mark.
I'm right there with him. That's what it seems like to me. Even if Brock Purdy's recovery is smooth and it's great, and it still seems like it's likely he misses at least a couple of games. Like it just seems like that's where we're headed. That would be a good thing, considering, as we just talked about a little bit ago, he doesn't know if he's going to play at all this season. So missing 2-3 games, that would ultimately be a win for the 49ers. Don't want to rehash the whole conversation we just had, and it's been a lot of the talking points over the last month or so. You guys know how I feel about how I think the 49ers feel about Trey Lance. All that said, who does that leave? It leaves Sam Darnold. If I had to pick one of the three guys to be the Niners' week 1 starting quarterback right now, Evan, I would pick Sam Darnold. It's because I don't think Brock Purdy is going to be healthy enough for week 1. And I think the 49ers are generally turned off to the idea of giving Trey Lance a start because, for whatever reason, I think they don't believe in him as a quarterback. That leaves Sam Darnold. He'd be my pick to start week 1 for the 49ers, as crazy as that sounds.
I mean, it's not crazy. You got two choices, but that's okay. I mean, you could take Sam Darnold, and I will take Trey Lance. If Brock Purdy is not ready to go in week 1, in my opinion, there would be a lot to answer for if Trey Lance is not your starting quarterback. Now, maybe Kyle Shanahan doesn't give a damn about that, and he's going to walk out there and say, hey, Sam Darnold, we brought him in here to compete for QB1 reps, and he went out there and won the job, and Trey's still great. We still feel like we have two starting caliber quarterbacks, or, whatever throwaway cliche he's going to use at that point. I don't see a scenario in which you can pitch Sam Darnold as your day 1 starter when you still have Trey Lance on the roster. And maybe just, like, one of the reasons why I do think why Sam Darnold was brought in this offseason is because, yes, there's some question marks, sure, about Trey, whether you want to talk about his accuracy, his tools, his speed, how he processes the game, whatever you want to nitpick. But I also think the injury factor does play in here a bit for Trey Lance. He's supposed to be completely healthy by OTAs, but he did have a season-ending injury, and it's not to his arm like Brock Purdy was, but you never know how a guy's going to bounce back. And so, in my opinion, Sam Darnold, it was the best insurance plan that the 49ers could find, and were able to convince him to join San Francisco to, quote-unquote, compete for that job. Trey Lance, at this point in his career, is also, unfortunately, injury-prone. And so if he starts, which I think he will at the beginning of the season, if Brock Purdy does not play and is not available, then Sam Darnold's the next man up, and maybe he sees himself as a snap away from being the starting quarterback for the 49ers.
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, okay, let me ask you this. You think Trey Lance starts week 1, but everything you've said about, injury prone, and I won't disagree with you. I think it's probably a little bit of an unfair title for him. It's not his fault. It's just the way that the cookie has crumbled so far in his career. Who do you think starts more games for the 49ers this coming season, Darnold or Trey Lance? Take it more than just week 1. Which one are you picking?
Do I get to assume that Trey will be healthy or no the entire year?
Oh, I guess that's kind of a part of the question. No, you don't get to assume that. No.
I'll still take Trey Lance.
Okay.
If Brock Purdy misses the entire season, I think Trey Lance starts more games than Sam Darnold.
I think that would be the right decision from the franchise's point of view. Like, they just need, I mean, what was it? John Lynch said it with the owners meeting or whenever it was before that, the combine. I think it was the combine, said Trey needs to play. He needs to play. And you and I both had fun kind of poking holes through what he said because it just goes against everything that they have actually done this offseason. It seems like they're setting up for him not to play the way that they've, said Brock Purdy is their starting quarterback, which again, in a vacuum, isn't the wrong thing. It just goes against everything that they've said about Trey Lance. It would be the right decision. At some point, you need to learn what you have in your third overall pick. They haven't done that yet. So I'm with you. That should be the answer. I'm just not in a spot where I can feel confident that that is the answer that they would ultimately come to. I think the inclusion of Sam Darnold on this roster tells you a little bit about how they feel about Trey Lance. If it was someone else, if it was, I don't know, even a Marcus Mariota, even though I love me some Marcus Mariota, but even if it was someone like him who's on the downturn of his career, who isn't still on the younger side like Sam Darnold, who probably doesn't have anywhere to climb, is only declining, that would signal more confidence in Trey Lance to me. But because it's Sam Darnold, I don't know. I just feel like they're not just looking for insurance. They're looking for a potential starting quarterback, and I think that's who they think they have in Sam Darnold.
Yeah, like I hear what you're saying, and I do think that Sam Darnold's presence indicates some hesitance about Trey Lance. Otherwise, well, number one, he would unequivocally be the starter. Like the fact that Brock Purdy is coming off a UCL tear and is going to have a chance to compete for the starting quarterback job does not often happen unless you were already the go-to guy, as we saw with Jake Delhomme and the Carolina Panthers. Brock Purdy had to start last year and took full advantage of his opportunities. If Trey Lance was that dude before he went down, to me, he would probably have a great chance to slot right back in. I think that both with what we've seen last year, as well as the previous years before, to me, both Shanahan and Lynch are looking at this season as we cannot have a repeat of 2020. We cannot have a year in which we have a win now roster and not win now, and not maximize the chance to get back to where we've been the last 2 years, which is the NFC championship game, and ideally go further. Sam Darnold is great insurance for that goal, in my opinion. If Brian Baldinger feels strongly that Sam Darnold is going to, compete for the starting job and wouldn't be surprised if he wins it, I mean, I guess I wouldn't be surprised with what anything happens in the 49ers quarterback room, because it seems like every single time we know what is going to happen, they get thrown a curveball and something else sends it in completely into right field. I have no idea who is going to be the starter at year's end, but I feel confident that if Brock Purdy's not ready at the beginning of the year, that it will be Trey Lance. And I'm curious what you think, not just what you think that the 49ers think.
I think that Trey Lance is a guy you should start and you should play and you should figure out who he is. That's what I think. You said something really interesting though, Evan. You said the Niners and their win now roster, like they don't have time to mess around and maybe figure out who their young quarterback is. I think you're 100% right there. The issue that the 49ers are running into, or where does the blame lie? It doesn't necessarily, let's say they don't play Trey Lance a lot this year. The blame doesn't necessarily lie on the 49ers for that decision this year. The blame lies on how they've handled the last 2 seasons, because they've gotten to this point and they still don't know anything about Trey Lance. You're at a point where your roster is kind of at a bit of a tipping point. Trent Williams is getting pretty old. You are going to have to make decisions about the future of some of your wide receivers. You're getting to a point where this roster is becoming pretty bloated and some changes are coming. You haven't really taken advantage. They've been to 2 NFC championship games in a row. I know that's big. They've been really close to the Super Bowl, but they haven't gotten one yet. They absolutely needed to have a set plan with Trey Lance by now, and they don't have that yet. So if they decide that they can't mess around another year and try to figure out what Trey Lance is, okay, in a vacuum, in this season, considered by itself, that's probably the right decision because you have a great roster and you want to do what is best to get this team to the Super Bowl. And maybe that's not throwing out there a guy who only has 4 career starts. Okay, but you cannot convince me that you didn't bungle the last 2 seasons by not giving Trey Lance a shot. And I know last year is a little bit different because he got hurt. But you also put your quarterback in harm's way, Kyle Shanahan. You messed that up. And his rookie year, you go to Jimmy Garoppolo, okay, that's fine. You do not figure out what your quarterback, your young prize quarterback is through 2 seasons, that is on you.
Interestingly enough, I'm not sure I feel as strongly about it as you do, just because the year I didn't expect Trey Lance to be a day one starter with his collegiate resume. I don't think it's fair to ask a guy who's played less than 20 games in college to immediately step in and be the dude on a team that is ready to win.
No, but it's not about, as a
And
rookie.
then, but last year he was supposed to be the guy and he got hurt. I mean, I don't really know what you want from him.
Well, it's not about you think that he's going to lead you to a Super Bowl as a rookie. It's that he has to go through the growing pains at some point. And the 49ers clearly aren't willing to let him go through the growing pains this season. At least it seems like that. Looking back in hindsight, it's easy. I know hindsight's 2020. They should have let him go through the growing pains his rookie year. Imagine what last year could have been like. Imagine what this year could have been like. I know we're going to talk about this guy coming up in a second. It's what the Eagles did with Jalen Hurts. And now he's signing a gigantic contract, and they're looking to be perennial contenders in the NFC. The 49ers were not willing to sacrifice, the 2021 season, Trey Lance's rookie year, because they thought they had a good enough team. They were willing to do it next year. Then they got bit in the butt because of an injury. And again, they're not willing to do it this year. At some point, you got to be willing to do it again, Kyle. And the Niners have shown that they're not willing to do it.